So a pretty interesting discussion spilled out on Twitter yesterday regarding a video that NerdCity uploaded against Lele Pons. This video was about 50 minutes long. I watched it. I personally enjoyed most of it. But with it being a 50-minute video, there's bound to be some parts of it that are not as good as others. And a YouTuber who goes by the name of Nicholas DiOrio was quick to point this out on his Twitter when he said, "Someone just said this to me and I think it sums up my ideas perfectly. That was the Rise of Skywalker of NerdCity's video catalog, but I would say that Copa segment was the equivalent of Luke milking the cow in The Last Jedi. Trigger warning for anyone who loved Parents' Worst Nightmare 2, Return of the FTC." And for those of you who don't know, what Nick is referring to in that last tweet is the title of NerdCity's previous video criticizing child advertising on YouTube, which was titled Parents' Worst Nightmare, Jake Paul. And to illustrate this point further, Nick also posted this onto his Twitter.
I really did not want to invite regulation into YouTube. You know, I hate having more laws.
Guess what, dummies? The regulators have come home to roost.
For those of you who don't know, the first segment comes from an interview NerdCity did on No Jumper, and the second part comes from his newest video against Lele Pons. To give you a bit more context on those clips in particular, I'm going to show you the extended versions of the two clips Nick showed on his Twitter.
So what's going on? What's happening with this next adpocalypse?
But this is with the kids' videos?
Yeah, well, I guess we're seeing the results of
It's going to affect us too, though.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
We're seeing the results of the settlement between the FTC and YouTube. I guess they agreed that YouTube's going to need to take certain steps in the future to, you know, to make sure that children aren't being targeted by
weirdos.
And, well, you made an excellent video showing that fucking Jake Paul was literally breaking all kinds of FCC laws and stuff.
So one of the things that really I chuckled at was to see that Jake Paul was admitting that I'm making content for 8-year-olds because he's just put himself in a category of content that has very strict regulations. So I wasn't saying at the time that Jake Paul was breaking existing laws that would cover YouTube.
But if there were laws.
Yeah, look at applicable laws. Like, even if they don't cover you yet or they haven't been tested in court to apply to this new medium, look at what the close laws are, because those are probably going to be the ones that clamp down on you. I really did not want to invite regulation into YouTube. You know, I hate having more laws. And so if we have to, you know, submit our stuff to a standards and practices at YouTube eventually, that's a really dark scenario. Yeah. I don't want that, you know. So part of what I was doing with calling out Jake Paul was I was trying to appeal to him, like, hey, scale this back a little bit. Like, this is so far off of what's legal on television that don't ruin this for everybody, including yourself, you know. And I don't know that he ever has. And now YouTube and the FTC are going to force him to.
So, what does our audience look like today?
That's a very good question.
Why don't you have a seat there and get comfortable?
The fans who make videos addressed to Lele Pons look like this, and this, and this, and this. Her fan meetups are no different. She features children in her videos of various young ages, and she makes videos out of early childhood topics and interests like the Tooth Fairy, Dora the Explorer.
Dora! Can you find the twerkers? Back, 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 back.
I love you, Dora.
Thanks for nothing, you idiot. Oh, no swiper, no swiping.
Perfect.
Swiper. Dora, that was hot.
And just like Jake Paul, if you ask Lele, who are you making content for? She'll admit it.
8 years old? 8 to...
9-year-olds.
Our fan base is like from like what, 9 to like 17.
As I researched the legality of Jake Paul videos as broadcast children's content, I came across this one fact again and again. Networks are very careful to label their young adult content as intended for 13 and up, even when they know that it's gathering an audience far below that. So when I heard Jake Paul and Lele Pons freely admitting that their raunchy content is targeted at 8-year-olds and 9-year-olds.
Yes, Lele, we know. You're an idiot.
I was stunned by how bird-brained they are. Guess what, dummies? The regulators have come home to roost. In September of this year, the FTC fined YouTube $170 million for violating the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, or COPA. Not surprised!
The more YouTube replaces conventional television, the more likely, inevitable it becomes that some ambitious regulator is going to come along, see what you're doing, and crack down on everybody. So maybe you and your clan can restrain your greed.
The disingenuous old argument that YouTube doesn't know if kids under 13 are creating accounts in violation of the TOS and then watching this crap all day long just got thrown out the window by the US government. YouTube was like, we don't know. FTC was like, shut up. One of the outcomes of YouTube's settlement with the FTC is that from now on, all creators must self-report if the content is aimed at children, and violations result in the creator being fined almost $50,000 per infraction.
Now, before we get into the Twitter replies, it's also important to note that the clips I just showed you from the Lele Pons video is very reminiscent and borderline the same as the stuff he said in his Jake Paul video, which was made over a year ago. Which is why the hypocrisy is kind of shocking, because he heavily implies he's for it in the Jake Paul video, then says he's against it in the No Jumper interview, and then heavily implies he's for it in the Lele Pons video. Either way, let's get straight into the reactions. The first one comes from Turkey Tom, who replies to Nick by saying, I think you missed the point of the video. He literally played a clip from one of his other videos where the devil said something like, irresponsible behavior on YouTube will lead to regulation. The entire point of his Jake Paul video was that if Jake does not stop breaking rules, then eventually the government will notice, and Nerd basically gave him a guide as to how to stop that from happening. That was clearly shown in his newest video as well. Nick responds to him by saying, that's not the argument. Yeah, I've debated that multiple times. The devil mentions self-policing, and that entire thing falls flat on its face in a 1 million view viral video. In no world was Jake going to look at CTA, a law that still doesn't apply to YouTube, and change his content. The argument here is me taking the piss that this dude says he's anti-regulation, then he goes on to say everything that a pro-regulation person would say in his new video. Firefly responds to Nick's tweet by saying, I think the intent was to point out the content is inviting regulation, which was much more clear in this vid. Nick then replies, I think this video is inviting regulation, highlighting targets and flagging down the FTC to clear him out. Firefly then responds, I mean, he's got a big channel and reach and all, but that might be overestimating just a wee bit. Nick then responds, nah lol, he's pretty clear in the description. People could say that with the Jake Paul video, but this is the second time now. Then he shows a screenshot of NerdCity's video description on his Lele Pons video, where at the very top it says, Lele Pons makes toxic, raunchy videos for kids. Lele Pons has been heavily promoted by social media platforms to young viewers. She accumulated a massive following between the ages of 9 and 18, particularly among preteen girls. The production style quickly fatigues adult viewers, who may be quick to write it off as for kids. Lele steps over the lines of what society deems appropriate for child viewers. Like her fellow Viner, Jake Paul, Lele Pons weaves in advertising that is aimed at children, little of which complies with the long-standing industry or government regulations for child advertising. Firefly then responds to Nick's tweet about this by saying, I didn't get that vibe from the video itself though. Personally, I think YouTube invited the regulators when they played into the mainstream media and advertisers, and started down this family-friendly road to hell. And then NerdCity himself responds to Nick's initial tweet by saying, what I do want, YouTube to stop throwing harmful children's content onto the trending page, and into the feeds of kids. If CoverGirl ran a commercial like Lele's on TV, they would be apologizing by the next day. Brands and kids channels need to stop the anything goes approach. Josh Pescator responds to NerdCity by saying, wait, you mean your YouTube video didn't bring all this government regulation upon us? But Twitter said it started with your Jake Paul video, and Twitter is always right. Nicholas Diorio then responds, I mean, if you're cool with dudes making checklists of the FTC laws that get broken, and striking with the Copa Eagle of Truth, all the power to you. Nick then responds to NerdCity directly by saying, what you did. Created a checklist of all the things that you believe another YouTuber has explicitly violated, showing his part of the video where he shows that entire checklist and then the 100% sign. He then follows that up by saying, if CoverGirl ran a commercial like Lele's on TV, they would be apologizing by the next day. Dude, that's 7 lines of her description and the pinned comment. What law is broken? Showing that she did explicitly say that she was partnering with CoverGirl in that video that NerdCity ended up criticizing in his video. Alex Silverstein then responds to Nick by saying, how do you know she didn't add that stuff after she got called out? Just because it's there now doesn't mean it was there then. Nicholas Diorio then responds, comments won't load, but thanks. It used to be at the top of the description when the ad came out, so it was even more transparent back then, April 17th. No laws were broken by this upload in 2017. Unwanted commentary responds to Nick by saying, "Children are dumb and impressionable." Nick replies by saying, "Okay, hopefully the fully capable parents don't cave and spoil their dumb impressionable children who didn't have the credit cards to even buy the makeup in the first place." Unwanted commentary responds by saying, "It is about getting it in the child's head that makeup is a solution to their problems and attaching the CoverGirl brand specifically to that scenario. Advertising is not about immediate conversion into a sale. 5 years from now, this child will remember CoverGirl from a skit." Nick then responds, "What law was broken in 2017? To which Unwanted Commentary replies by saying, "The checklist about violating COPPA was separate in the video from the statements about the CoverGirl video. The checklist was there for the point of saying that she should be marketing her channel as made for children now. The CoverGirl segment was to point out scumbaggery." NerdCity responds to the part where Nicholas Diorio points out that he made the checklist and says, "That's not a list of violations. That's the FTC's attempt to clarify. If you do these things, you should consider your content as for kids. She does them all. Lele needs to mark her videos as for kids. Since her comments and ads are on, it appears she mislabeled her channel." Nick then responds, "Right, you were not for regulation. However, you were going to post a short/hardly detailed 6-minute segment snitching on regulations? Interesting. You keep spouting the self-police bullshit, when in reality contacting the media about a 1 million plus view video isn't self-policing. I have lectured you on clarity. Tommy has lectured you on clarity. You keep mentioning CTA and COPPA. You hardly go into detail on either. The average viewer has no idea that things like CTA don't apply to YouTube. You couple them together multiple times." NerdCity then responds to the first portion of Nicholas Diorio's reply by saying, "It's a critical video about Lele Pons, not a petition sent to the White House. I didn't contact Congress or say, 'Why did you put Lele on trending, FTC?' I said, 'Maybe this inappropriate kids content gets deleted.' Choosing the word snitching implies it shouldn't be criticized." Leanad responds to this by saying, "You say you don't support regulations such as COPPA, then you go and perform the investigation so the FTC doesn't have to. It doesn't add up. The rest of the video is fine, a great critique on Lele, but throwing in the legal side of it is completely unnecessary, and does more harm than it does good." Memeology 101 then responds to Leanad by saying, "But where does it end? Where do we stop the exposing? Criticize NerdCity all you want for his approach, but we should be free to do so. He is not actively targeting YouTube to destroy it like the guy who exposed child porn on YouTube did." By the way, he's referring to Matt's What It Is. This was a situation that happened early last year. I have a video on it if you want to check it up in the cards above. Leanad responds to Memeology 101 by saying, "If his stance was, I support these regulations, I think we need them to make the platform a better place, then we could agree to disagree. But he's saying one thing on No Jumper and Twitter while doing the opposite on YouTube." Memeology then responds, "I see, I get your point." Nicholas responds to Memeology's first response by saying, "Just as I'm free to criticize him. If the anti-regulation dude starts dropping checklists and signal boosting them to COPPA, which is universally hated, I'm gonna talk some shit. I get y'all like this guy." Memeology then responds, "I like you too. What the fuck does that have to do with anything, lol? I totally support the fact that you should be free to criticize him too. When someone criticizes you, I will be the first to give my take as well. You know it." Nicholas then responds, "I was just correcting myself because that read way snarkier than I intended, but you beat me to it. I just mean I know this dude is well respected, and it may look like I'm giving you a level of bias since this is the third Twitter war between us. This shit's legit stupid, since this has become a semi-annual thing." Now rewinding back to NerdCity's first response, Nicholas Diorio responds directly to that by saying, "What a wild use of hyperbole there, lol. The video was mostly valid criticism. You could have done the same segment without bringing the poorly clarified law into it. Doing a mini segment identifying reasons to fine her 500k is weird from a dude who is anti-regulation. It was so odd." NerdCity also responds to the part where Nicholas Diorio brings up Lele Pons' pinned comment and description by saying, "If CoverGirl ran ads on preteen girls' TV programs telling children when boys reject them, makeup will solve the problem, news outlets would be hammering them and they would pull the ad and apologize. YouTube permits this shit, but it shouldn't. It's twisted." Nick then responds, "Whoa, nerd! Are you requesting even more regulation? Because then, the regulators will have come home to roost." And obviously, due to the snarky nature of that tweet, NerdCity stopped responding after that point. But someone named Jibble did respond to Nick by saying, "You were pulling this out of proportion because the people who are doing this are manipulating their children's audience and misrating their content. If these things continue to happen, then the regulations will come like COPA. Leaving these things alone is a big problem." Nicholas the Oreo then responds, "What child without a credit card is in danger from a makeup ad?" Mr. Glowworm then responds, "There's more they take into consideration. It's not just about a child with a credit card." Sending a link to the American Psychological Association's take on advertising to children in order to prove his point. Nick then responds to this by saying, "I get that they take more into consideration. That doesn't mean I support or believe in it. I think CTA and COPA are ridiculous. The segment didn't break the laws in place at the time, and it's unlisted." Jibble then responds, "Yeah, the only problem is YouTube won't do anything about it. YouTube is evolving, and the laws you saying aren't in place will be if we don't show people that these creators are doing something illegally in another form of older media. These laws were made for a reason. I understand you, Nicholas. We should just address this problem, that's all." The morning after this whole Twitter debacle, Nicholas follows up his original post by saying, "The response to this tweet has been super interesting. I'm just having a laugh at a guy who says he's anti-regulation clearly being pro-regulation. I didn't buy it back then, and I don't buy it here. I mean, call it a gray area when I critiqued the Jake Paul video. Call it a gray area in the new Lele video? I'll judge ya, but fine. The dude said there should be stricter rules on advertising below this fucking tweet." Laughing my ass off. Is he a bad dude? No. Is his content bad? No. Is he plotting to overthrow the website? No. Is he the devil himself? No. But after talking to the dude, I think he's pro-regulation, and he's trying to appeal to both sides here. Thus, a contradiction was born. Thanks blah blah TED Talk. Optic Decay responds to this by saying, "Very disingenuous he is. I watched the new video he did. I like him to a degree, but the last bunch of things is clearly pro-regulation, which I disagree with. Especially the way it's been handled, like trying to fix a bullet wound with a piece of masking tape." Commentator Ed says, "To be honest, he's just not qualified to talk about this." 8 Thoughts says, "YouTube is filled with pseudo-intellectuals." Mr. Glowworm says, "The way I interpreted it, especially in the clip you posted, is if these people go unchecked, they will keep pushing until they land on government radar, this bringing regulation. I just don't think talking about it is contradictory or pro-regulation." Nick then responds, "Well, if you think his argument about self-policing with laws that don't exist yet on the platform to creators through viral million-view videos, I mean, that's your thing." And that is about it for the tweets. Definitely a lot that was said. I would love to hear what you guys think about this in the comment section below. If you want to see more videos like this, of course, be sure to subscribe with notifications on, as I will be frequently updating you on what's going on in the YouTube community. Be sure to follow me on Twitter as well to keep up to date with everything in real time and just to see my thoughts on things and some funny tweets in general. I recently had a bunch of communists attack me on Twitter, and that was pretty interesting. So if you want to follow shenanigans like that, be sure to check that out. Thank you so much to my channel members for supporting the channel, and with all that being said, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in another video.